Spaniards down in Florida. Now, as I said, here on your right, that building is the Civic Center. That's where we hold our cultural events here in Savannah. Now, remember, we are in the South. Those cultural events I'm talking about, mud wrestling, tractor pulls, roller derby, all that good stuff. It's also home of the Johnny Mercer Theater. Now, Johnny Mercer, he was a favorite son here in Savannah. He was a singer and a songwriter, wrote over 1,000 songs, won numerous awards for his musical abilities. Some of the songs that he wrote, Days of Wine and Roses, You Must Have Been a Beautiful Baby, and that old Andy Williams favorite, Moon River. Now, as we do make our way down over 4th Avenue, see this median here to your left, this tree-lined median. Those trees that you see there are called live oaks. Live oak is the state tree here in Georgia, and those trees do stay green year-round.
Wow.
They lose their leaves, but it's simply because another leaf is pushing in behind them. This is the steeple where, at the beginning of a movie, a little white feather came floating down out of the sky, landed at the foot of a gentleman sitting on a bench right up here. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute when we get up. That's all I'm going to say about that. As we make our way around this corner, if you look off to your right, you'll get another look at the steeple on top there. Get a nicer view from this side. And also like to point out the church here. Look how amazing this is. That church has the distinction of being the oldest standing church structure here in Savannah. There were churches older than that one, but they all had to be rebuilt because of damage from fires or storms. That one has withstood the test of time. That dates back to 1800, that church. And I'd like to point out the fence down here by the road. That's called the fence of presidents and poets. Each one of those medallions on that fence are the different statesmen and poets. Now, back in the day, iron was a sign of wealth here in Savannah. They said the more iron you had around your homes, the wealthier you were. And if you look to your right, I'd like to point out the downspouts on that building. They're also cast iron in the shape of dolphins.
There it is, Tracy, the benches on there where those people are.
And the monument to your left there, that is to James Oglethorpe, and as is the fashion of military monuments. He's facing his enemy, which would have been those Spaniards down in Florida. And here on her right, something to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
This is where she jumped out of her car. She looked in the window there. She saw her husband with the other woman. Now, there's been a lot of movies made in Savannah over the years besides Something to Talk About, Forrest Gump, and Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. Glory and Roots were both made here. Legends of Bagger Pass with Will Smith and Matt Damon. Forces of Nature with Sandra Bullock. And now we're crossing over Liberty Street. We'll be coming into our stop 3. Before we get there, this building with the columns on it, that will get to stop 3, which is the Sorrel Wheat House, built for wealthy merchants, Francis and Matilda Sorrel. If you are getting off here, just have to remain seated until the trolley comes to a complete stop, and I'll have a chance to open my doors. This is our stop number 3. That monument is to Sergeant William Jasper. Now, he was a hero in the Revolutionary War, lost his life in the battle, the Siege of Savannah. He was mortally wounded holding up the flag in that battle. Now, he was the only non-commissioned officer to have a monument named after him in the Revolutionary War. And here on your right, the Green Meldrum House. That's where General Sherman made his headquarters here in December of 1864. It's also the house where he wrote his letter to President Abraham Lincoln. That letter said, "I present to you the city of Savannah as a Christmas present with 150 heavy arms, lots of ammunition, and over 25,000 bales of cotton." Not a bad little Christmas present for our president to get. And as we make our turn here onto Bull Street, this building here coming up on our left, that big red brick building, that's the first building that Savannah College of Art and Design restored when they came to the city. That's the old Savannah Volunteer Guards Armory. Look at the cannons on the side there, all the ironwork. They did a great job fixing that building up. but Mercer Williams houses on this square. This is Monterey Square. Now Monterey Square is named after the Battle of Monterey. That was fought in the Mexican War. That war was from 1846 to 1848. Monument in the center of this square is to Count Casimir Pulaski. Now he was a Polish nobleman and offered his military services to General George Washington. Did a great job, but ended up losing his life in the battle, same battle as Sergeant Jasper, that siege of Savannah. He was the highest ranking foreign officer to be killed in that in the Revolutionary War. Now coming up on your right is going to be the Mercer Williams house. That's where the movie Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil was made. Now if you're not familiar with the story, Jim Williams, who was a very prominent person here in Savannah, shot and killed Danny Hansford in that building. The shooting occurred in that bottom left-hand window where you see that chandelier lit. That's the parlor area where the shooting occurred. Now Jim Williams ended up going to trial for that 4 times before he was eventually found not guilty. As we make our turn back on the bowl, you look to your left, that big tan building, that's the only Gothic style synagogue in the United States. That is Temple Mikveh Israel. They have the 3rd oldest Jewish congregation, dates back to 1733. Those Jewish settlers arrived here 5 months after James Oglethorpe came to the colony. Thing here in Savannah. Now, believe it or not, that fountain was actually purchased out of a mail order catalog. They paid $2,500 for that fountain, said to be only 3 of them in existence. There's that one, there's one in Poughkeepsie, New York, and the 3rd one is in Peru. Now we're coming up onto Whitaker Street. We're going to make a left onto Whitaker. This will change our architectural styles. We're now moving into the Victorian district. Homes in this area would have dated from 1840s to 1910. Anything off to your right, that's where James Oglethorpe went back in original more Telfair a little bit. Now this park here to your left, this is Forsyth Park, named after John Forsyth, who was a governor of Georgia. It is a 30-acre park. Joggers and walkers like it. It's 1 square mile going around the sidewalk around this park. And if you look to your left, that monument in the center there, that is to the Confederate soldiers. The wives and daughters of the Confederate soldiers commissioned to have that made. That was made up in Canada out of Canadian sandstone. Now those wives and daughters wanted to make sure that monument didn't touch northern soil on its way down here. So they ended up shipping it down here, came into the port here in Savannah, and in order to get it from the port out into the park, back in 1875, they rolled it on logs. They played it to the Georgia soldiers that fought in the Spanish-American War down in Cuba. Now we're going to be coming into our stop number 4, the old Telfair Hospital. Mary Telfair is the person that had this built. I already mentioned her sister Margaret Telfair. As I said, that Telfair, very I don't think $45,000 will be a down payment for that today. Now the architect for that mansion, his name was Alfred Lightberg. I will be showing you a few more Lightberg homes coming up in a little bit. Look off to your left, that old tower that you see there, that's the old WTOC radio tower. WTOC stands for Welcome to Our City.
It is.
And now as we cross over Abercorn Street, when we were going down Oglethorpe Avenue, I had mentioned the live oaks there, being the state tree here in Georgia. I want to show you one of the prettiest live oaks here in Savannah. If you look to your left in the side yard of this house right there, the size of that tree in that side yard there. Beautiful oak tree. That tree is over 300 years old.
This is a beautiful house.
There's different color bricks in it. Creams, browns, red bricks. It's coming up in the right-hand corner. Where you see those three different color bricks, that's called polychrome. Now, polychrome was just used to highlight different architectural features on the buildings. They use those different bricks to bring out the accents. Whitfield was also known for the way that he would put arches in his buildings, had Queen Anne towers on the ends of his buildings. This one coming up on the right-hand corner is in Whitfield, has those big Queen Anne towers on the ends. I love that. This double house that he built that one for the McMillan brothers. Now the McMillans made their fortune in the copperworks here in Savannah. And the last iceberg I'll point out is here on your right, also has the big Queen Anne towers on the ends. I like the block brick arches on there, all the iron. That's another double house that he built. So Iceberg did a pretty big footprint here in Savannah. That big church, that's the Wesley Monumental Methodist Church. That's named for John and Charles Wesley. Of course, John was a great preacher. Charles, the hymnwriter. Now, this will bring us into our stop number 5, the Massey Heritage Center. If you're getting off here, just visit, remain seated. Still try comes to a complete stop. All right. The church dates back to 1788 here in Savannah. This church dates to 1890, so both those churches, a lot of history here in Savannah. And now we're coming up on the Whitfield Square. Whitfield Square is named after the Reverend George Whitfield. He was the founder of the Bethesda Orphanage back in 1740. Now that gazebo that you see in the center of that square, that gazebo was a gift to the city. Burt Reynolds gave them that gazebo back in 1976 when he was here making his movie, Gator. That blockbuster hit. And now we're making our turn here on the Harrison Street. Across the street, this is Jones Street. Look here, your left and right. Now here, coming up on the Troop Square. Troop Square is named after George McIntosh Troop.
What is that thing?
He was like a career politician. He was a congressman, he was a senator, he was a governor of Georgia. Made his rounds politically, George McIntosh Troop. Now that armillary sphere that you see in the center of that square, that is a sundial, has the signs of the zodiac around it. And if you look to your left, that pink building that you see there, that's the Unitarian Universalist Church. Now the story I'd like to tell with that church had a music director. His name was James Pierpont. James Pierpont wrote a song that I would venture to say just about everybody on this trolley sings just about every year. That song used to be called Dashing Through the Snow. We know it as Jingle Bells. Look there to your left, you can see the plaque in the square there saying Jingle Bells was written right there while he was music director of the church. Now the only problem with my story is there's a town called Medford, Massachusetts. That town has 27. Now that Andrew Lowe House is also a stop on our Ghosts and Gravestones tour at night. We do have exclusive rights to go in that building, the only tour company that does. They take you inside and tell you about different paranormal things that have occurred in that building over the years. You can get a discount on a Ghost and Gravestone ticket simply because of the trolley today. there on your right, that building with those white posts on it, that's the Flannery O'Connor childhood home, Flannery O'Connor, the author. And now we are going to be coming into our stop number 6, the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist. Now what I tell folks about this cathedral, it's air conditioned in there. Just a great, now a lot of history in that cemetery. First burial in there was in 1750, the Mass in 1853. But Lynette, who was a signer of the Declaration of Independence, is buried in there. That's also the cemetery where General Sherman kept his cavalry when he was here in 1864.
Look at the big bell.
Bell that you see there, that's known as Big Duke. That's the old Savannah Firebell. That's the bell they used to ring to signal people to fires back in the day. Now, I want to point out 2 buildings are going to be side by side here. The first one has the flags on the side of it here. That's called the Milestone Inn. That was the first bed and breakfast. James, the architect for that building. William J. came from Bath, England. Now, when Alexander Telfair passed away, he left that building to his sister, Mary Telfair. We've already talked about Mary, saying how she was a lady of stipulations. Now, she gave this building away, gave it to the Georgia Historical Society. The stipulation that went along with that building was that it would always remain at the market area today with shops, restaurants, and art galleries. If you're getting off here, stop number 7, just ask that you remain seated until the trolley comes to a complete stop and I've had a chance to open the doors. Coming up on our right is the Webb Military Museum. A lot of artifacts on display in this museum. They have things from the Revolutionary War through Desert Storm. A lot of neat things in there.